7 terror attacks in just the last 1 month, all of them concentrated in the Jammu region. What in the world is going on and why? Why are we not being able to stop these attacks? And most importantly, how should the Indian Army and the Indian government now respond to the terrorists and to their handlers across the border in Pakistan? That's my top focus on the news strike.
Kathua attack bleeds army. Seventh attack in Jammu region. Pakistan's clear design revealed. Escalation before Jammu and Kashmir polls. Attempt to derail democracy. How and when will India respond? Big focus on News Track.
The Lok Sabha elections in Jammu and Kashmir were a resounding success. Assembly elections now around the corner. The ISI and the Pak-based terrorists clearly seeking to up the ante in the build-up to the elections, pushing India on the defensive, trying to get us to postpone the assembly elections in the Union territories. How should India be dealing with this situation? We'll get into that. Let me take you through the headlines I'm tracking tonight. Mumbai hit-and-run accused Mihir Shah arrested 60 hours after he mowed down a woman. 12 others, including his mother and sisters, also detained for helping him hide. PM Modi's big message to Russian President Vladimir Putin at the Kremlin. Narendra Modi says India sides with peace and that guns and bombs are not the solution. Russia confers its highest civilian honor on the Indian people. Days after the murder of BSP Neta, Tamil Nadu Chief Minister M.K. Stalin meets victim Armstrong's family in Chennai. BJP mounts pressure, demands a CBI probe. No relief for Suraj Revanna. The JDS Neta is denied bail in the unnatural sex assault case. Suraj Revanna will remain in custody. Dalal Street bull run continues. Sensex and Nifty hit new all-time closing highs. Auto, FMCG and Pharma rally. 5 soldiers have been killed in the 7th attack in Jammu in just a month from the time that Prime Minister Modi was sworn in for the 3rd time. It was a classic ambush by terrorists. The army has launched counter-terror operations. The NIA has been called in. But the question I'm going to be looking at very carefully on the news track tonight is why has there been such a surge in terror in the Jammu region? Why not in Kashmir? And why is it that basic protocols are being violated which allows for the terrorists to pull off these kind of attacks? And most importantly, what's likely to happen next? Why is the ISI upping the ante in the build-up to the assembly elections in Jammu and Kashmir? And how should India be responding?
Five army jawans killed in a terror attack in Jammu and Kashmir. The terrorists ambushed their truck in Machedi, a remote area in Kathua district, on Monday, leaving 5 others injured. The soldiers were on patrol when the attack took place. Naib Subedar Anand Singh, Havildar Kamal Singh, Nayak Vinod Singh, Rifleman Anuj Negi and Rifleman Adarsh Negi are the brave hearts who lost their lives.
Bullets are lying here. So one can just imagine the situation that must have prevailed here at that point of time when terrorists carried out this attack. Vehicles have to slow down, vehicles have to move slowly on this road because it's a Kacha road, and the terrorists specifically chose this place because they felt that they could, inflict maximum casualties on the security forces.
Sources tell India Today the attack was carried out by Pakistani terrorists. Local guides helped the terrorists in doing recce and provided them food and shelter, according to sources. Sources also claim that terrorists used US-made M4 carbine in the attack. The driver was targeted first to stop the army truck from going forward. Defence Minister Rajnath Singh has offered condolences to families of victims. National Conference Chief and former CM Farooq Abdullah has slammed Pakistan for promoting terror.
Terrorism किसी को मदद नहीं करेगी. अगर वो मुल्क जो इनको भेज रहा है, हमारा पड़ोसी, और ये समझता है कि इससे वो यहाँ की तब्दीली लाएगा, वो नहीं होगा. उनको ये देखना चाहिए, पहले ही वो बर्बाद हो गए हैं. और लड़ाई दोनों मुल्कों के लिए तबाही ही लाएगा, कुछ और नहीं लाएगा. तो इसको बंद करें, मेहरबानी करके इस टेररिज्म को बंद करें.
The opposition has launched a scathing attack on the Narendra Modi government over the attack.
इस प्रकार के आतंकी घटनाएं लगातार बढ़ रही हैं. सरकार दावा करती सदन के अंदर, लोकसभा में, राज्यसभा में, ये मामला बहुत बेहतर हो गया है, स्थिति नियंत्रण में है, वहाँ कोई अब गतिविधि नहीं है. लेकिन हमारे नौजवानों को अगर सीमा पार से शहीद लोग कर रहे हैं और उन पर घात लगाकर हमला हो रहा है, जाने जा रही हैं, तो कहीं ना कहीं सरकार को जवाब देना पड़ेगा.
The Kathua terror attack is the 7th in just 1 month. All of them in Jammu region.
While the entire nation mourns the loss of our brave hearts, our netas continue to indulge in blame game. At a time when our politicians should have united against terror, they are scoring cheap brownie points over each other. This is Sunil Bhatt reporting from Billawar in Kathua district of Jammu and Kashmir for India Today.
So there are two aspects here. One, you've got the terrorists and the handlers in Pakistan clearly wanting to up the ante in the build-up to the assembly elections in Jammu and Kashmir. And secondly, you've got glaring lapses in security protocols as well. Let me take you through some of those lapses. Point number one, the failure to be able to deal, it's being said by sources in the army that there are about 24 terrorists who are active in that Poonch region. We haven't been able to take them down. At that instance, there was a failure to be able to detect the movement of the terrorists. It's been said that there must be an effort to have drones flying in the area, so you have an eyesight into what's happening in front of you, and that clearly wasn't done. So first you have an intel failure to detect the movement of terrorists in the region. That's lapse number one. Let's now come to lapse number two. Why was there no road opening party? Usually on routes which are deemed sensitive, early in the morning you have a road opening party, which is the first cavalcade that moves through very carefully, looks at the roads, whether they've been mined, whether there are any terrorists lurking, tries to sanitize that whole area. So before this army truck went on that day in the morning, why was there no road opening party that was deployed to try and ensure that there were no terrorists in the area, and the area was fully sanitized before vehicles were allowed to ply on it? Lapse number two. Why was a soft top truck used, instead of using an armored vehicle carrier? Now, armored vehicle carriers have at least basic protection. They can't protect you against a massive missile attack, for example, but they can ward off most bullets and the damage would be much lesser. So why is a soft top vehicle being used rather than an armored vehicle carrier, when it's been decided that in this Jammu region as well, now because of heightened security, the troops will only be moved in armored vehicle carriers rather than in soft top vehicles? So that's lapse number three right there. Lapse number four. Why is this area of Kathua, which really borders Himachal Pradesh and is in Jammu, why is it being considered peaceful? On the 11th of June, 2 days after Prime Minister Modi was sworn in, there was another attack in the Kathua region. So why is it being considered peaceful given the fact that the recent attacks have happened in the area of Kathua? And then the fifth lapse that we are looking at, that this area is closer to Himachal than Jammu. So none of the Jammu specific security protocols, because remember, in Doda, Kishtwar, Bhadarwa, Indarwa, that whole belt, a lot of heightened security protocols have been implemented. Because Kathua is, closer to the Himachal Pradesh border, therefore the same kind of security protocols were not implemented, which clearly was the wrong thing to do. So A, you've got lapses, B, you've got new intent from the terrorists and their handlers, and how should the Indian army and the Indian government now respond? That's what we look at on the news track. I want to introduce you to our guests joining us on this broadcast. We've got SP Waid, former Director General of Police of Jammu and Kashmir. We've got Lieutenant General Satish Dua, former Chief of Integrated Defence Staff. We've got Colonel Ajay Shukla joining us. We have Sushant Sareen, Senior Fellow at the Observer Research Foundation, expert on national security. We've got Ashpreet Khadial from the Congress Party, and I just want to tell our viewers that the BJP decided they would not be sending a spokesperson for this debate. So I want to go across first and foremost to General Dua. General Dua, I want you to try and explain to our viewers why terrorists have upped the ante in the Jammu region so much after Prime Minister Modi's third term began. It started on the ominous note on the 9th of June. There was an attack when all of us were at Rashtrapati Bhavan. Since then, there have been 7 attacks that have happened in the Jammu region in exactly 1 month, which, if you compare with the past and how it's been over the past 10 years, is a sharp uptick in terror attacks. Why do you think this is happening? What's the message? What's the intent? And then in the second part of the conversation, I'll try and deal with how should India respond. But let's look at why this is happening in your estimate. General Dua.
To my mind, there is a clear design to activate the dominant areas. The dormant areas. These areas have been dormant over the past decade. I mean, we've had 1 or 2 incidents in the last few months. But overall, we are talking of south of Pir Panjal, the so-called Jammu region, which is a large region actually. Let us remember that when we say Jammu region, I just want to explain it to the viewers, is actually very mountainous and replete with forest. It's a forested area. Unlike Kashmir Valley is essentially it's a valley floor where most of the action, violence and encounters take place. Coming back to why they're doing this. Overall, as we had a peaceful election. In fact, I remember the day peaceful elections were taking place over here, mobs were lynching policemen in POK in riots that were taking place there, and I was on some channel to compare that thing. So I'm sure the people in Kashmir, not only people in Kashmir are watching it, people across in Pakistan and POK are watching that, and that they could not tolerate. So thereafter,
no, but what purpose is served for the terrorists by trying to activate dormant areas in the Jammu region? This is very close to Himachal Pradesh, not even as if people here are dying to form an independent country. There is no clamor for Pakistan or anything like that. So what purpose is served by trying to activate these dormant areas in Jammu?
Because we have the elections, the state elections, which are imminent in the next couple of months. And the idea is to, when I said the dormant areas being activated, let's also understand that this area is different from the rest of the J&K, where there is a LOC, there is a very tight security grid of Rashtriya Rifles and Army battalions, whereas this area has the international borders, that is the Kathua Samba region, has an international border which is manned by BSF. In the rear areas, there is CRPF and police. The army presence is also there. But whenever there are multiple agencies involved, and this is under Western Command, not under Northern Command. So whenever there are multiple agencies involved, the terrorists are trying to also take advantage of that. That our security forces and agencies will be hostage to some coordination that we will have.
Okay, Colonel Shukla, from your lens, one of course is the upcoming elections in Jammu and Kashmir. Do you think that's the prime reason? Because the government would like to send out a message that the Lok Sabha elections were very successful, a lot of response, high voter participation. Is that what the terrorists and their handlers in Pakistan are trying to mar and raise questions about? Is that why we're seeing this spike? What do you think?
That could be one reason, but it would be a subsidiary reason, not the main reason. the main reason to my mind, and just to recall the past, in 1999, 98, 99, this region was at the height of insurgency. General Dua and I were there together, in fact, and in the Poonch area, and it was heavily anticipated that going into the 2002 elections, this area would be activated by Pakistan. It would be in terrible shape. But to everyone's surprise, the area remained quite dormant. And it was the Kashmir area that actually saw violence, if any. There are a couple of reasons that one has to keep in mind. The first of them is that this area is not inhabited by Kashmiris. This is inhabited by Punchis, by Sudans. These are Marshall Hill tribes that are sort of have their base just across the line of control from this area. And they are they are not sort of ideologically given to supporting the Kashmiris. So that is one reason why this area was would be sort of called a low intensity area. It would be you would have something like a road opening party being missed out, which you would never have in Kashmir.
No, that's on the lapses side. But terrorists are wanting to strike in this region. I'm trying to understand from you why 7 attacks in the last 1 month. Why?
Because also keep in mind that this is a very prime infiltration area. Instead of infiltrating across the line of control in Kashmir, the terrorists very often say we'll infiltrate in the Samba, Kathua, Jammu region, and then make our way over the Pir Panjal Pass and find our operating grounds in Kashmir. So that is another very important reason. This provides a subsidiary infiltration area that makes infiltration easier and difficult for the military to keep track of.
Sushant Sarin, the reality also is that some parts of the Jammu region have been cleared out of previous deployment as we've moved some of our forces towards the line of actual control. Is that a vulnerability you think these Pak terrorists are trying to exploit and put pressure on the Indian Army to put people back in these areas which have been cleared out to some extent of previous deployments?
I think it's multiple factors. Look, let's face it. What is happening in Jammu is not new. It's been happening for at least the last 3 or 4 years. And there are sudden spikes, and then suddenly things cool down a bit, and there is just the odd incident, and then suddenly there is a spate of attacks. Now, in this particular case, Rahul, we are not very clear whether this was the same group which was involved in the 3 back-to-back kind of attacks which happened sometime in June at the time of the swearing in of the Prime Minister. We don't know whether it's part of that same bunch of people or this is a new infiltration or some other cell. We don't know. Clearly, these guys are very well trained. The spot which they pick for ambushing, the discipline with which they fire, the discipline with which they disappear. These are not your normal run-of-the-mill terrorists which you now find these days in the valley. That is one. Secondly, yes, there has been a certain amount of, redeployment of the security forces from this region because there has been a fair amount of peace and normalcy in this region. So, at the time when there were other exigencies, the military deployments took place, and maybe there are certain gaps that should still not explain why, certain standard operating procedures are not followed. Now, why are these attacks happening? Part of the reason is what General Dua said, that inside the valley, it's become quite difficult for them to carry out attacks, notwithstanding the encounter which happened yesterday or day before in Kulgam. But even otherwise, it's quite difficult to attack in the valley. So a lot of the center of gravity of terrorism has shifted into the Jammu region, where for the same reasons as General Dua explained, it's a much more hospitable region in some ways for terrorist action.
No, but they have lesser local support. Arguably, the level of sympathy and hamdards, overground workers that they have in Kashmir, they'd have lesser support amongst people in Jammu.
I'm not so. I don't entirely agree with that. Please remember, in the past, what Ajay was talking about in the 90s, they did have support. There are pockets of support, and what has happened is, over the last 5-6 years, the fact that everybody either talks about Jammu or everybody talks about Kashmir, and there's this entire region in between which has been completely ignored, and anger has been bubbling over there. And we've seen expressions of that at the political level, and we have seen expressions of that perhaps at the level of terrorism as well.
No.
So to say that there is no support, I wouldn't entirely buy into
No,
it.
I'm not saying there will be no support. The fact that there is support is obvious because that's how these terrorists survive. But I'm saying there's arguably lesser support in these regions than there would be north of the Pir Panjal. But there is support quite clearly. But Mr. Waid, my question to you is about these lapses, and I just went through a list of procedural lapses which led to this kind of a terror attack. Now the fact is that the Jammu region has been targeted so much that I would imagine from the outside that forces there on the highest alert possible. Now some of these things like ROP is not happening, road opening party is not happening, or for example using a soft top vehicle, that just seems like, you know, you're just inviting trouble, you're not being as careful as you could and should be.
Rahul, I was seeing the lapses, 5 lapses you had listed, and I couldn't avoid appreciating. See, when I was in service about a few years back, General Dua is here. He would be knowing it. What happened? 9 Corps was, Jammu region. Earlier, it used to be looked after by entirely Nagrota Corps, and even this DIB, which is Jammu based, used to be under the Nagrota Corps, that is 16 Corps. But few years back, I'm talking about I think 7-8 years, I don't remember exact year, this corps was actually divided, and the Jammu DIV was taken out of 16 Corps and put under the Western Command. And now that is 9 Corps, which is based near Pathankot. Now, it is so surprising that with all this activity happening, all these 5 lapses should not happen for any security personnel who is aware of what is happening around. I think these things should not happen. But I think the mindset remains that you are the Western Command is absolutely normal. Chandigarh mein to kuch ho nahi raha, Pathankot bilkul normal hai. So see, I think those that sense of that everything is normal. So I think that has led to these lapses. Should not have happened.
Ashdeep Khadial, we're seeing the Congress attack the government on these terror attacks. The fact also is that this indicates the intent of the Pak army and the ISI and the terrorist handlers, and they're looking to up the ante. Why is the Congress party blaming the Modi government? Explain, Ashdeep.
It's Ashdeep, Rahul. 5 soldiers have been martyred. And Mr. Modi hasn't uttered a single word over this matter. We want to know why. Second of all, you see 43 terror attacks happened in 2023 and 20 terror attacks have happened in 2024 so far. And Mr. Modi, in the last 5 years, since 2019, after the abrogation of Article 370, visited Jammu and Kashmir for the first time in March 2024. Shouldn't Mr. Modi go there, take stock of the situation whenever there's a terror attack that has happened?
No, but this is a bit of a ridiculous demand. If there's a terror attack, what's the Prime Minister supposed to do there? If he goes there, he'll be attacked for ending up at a terror site.
I'm sorry. I think this is a ridiculous argument to make that what is this Prime Minister supposed to do? Is he supposed to visit Jammu and Kashmir for once in 5 years? And second
he's supposed to go to Jammu and Kashmir, obviously, but why should he go to a terror attack site?
I'll tell you. No. I'll tell you everything. Please allow me the time for that. One, there is no state government there. Hasn't been for the last 10 years, right? The people cannot go to the state government with their grievances. Nobody is there to address their concerns, their issues, their grievances. And if the Prime Minister, who said, and Mr. Amit Shah also said, after the abrogation of Article 370, there would be no terrorism. It would come to a grinding halt. Has that happened? It hasn't. And therefore, in order to reimpose faith in the government, reimpose faith in peace, in safety, in security, the least that the Modi government could have done was gone there, met with the locals, been there, spend more time, at least have more visits than 1 or 2. That's the least that they
But
could
that
have
is
done
exactly
in
what the
last 5 years.
terrorists would want, that it seems as if the Indian state is so shaken that the Prime Minister is scurrying to get there. That's exactly what they'd want. I can see why you from an opposition lens want this.
I think now, 1 second please, I just say one thing, Rahul, that it was the job of the government to ensure that Jammu and Kashmir was in safe hands, was completely safe and secure. And if they haven't been able to ensure that, and because
But that's the argument, Sushant Sarin, that the opposition will make, that the government's claim was we will do away with Article 370 and terror will be finished. That terror existed because of 370. 370 is gone, terror isn't.
So, Rahul, I think let's be very clear. It is the job of the opposition to ask questions and ask difficult questions, and I don't see why anybody should have any objections to it. So I don't have any quibbles on that count. My only issue is that when they keep, linking up Article 370 with this, it's one thing to use it as a political point scoring, which is fair enough. But when you link it up with Article 370, are you saying that if at all you are coming back into power, you will bring Article 370? I don't think that's the case. One. Number two, yes, the situation has certainly improved in Jammu and Kashmir over the years, but there have been also certain political lapses. And I don't see why we should not be talking about it. One, what is the new change in politics that has come about? Frankly, nothing, really. And as a result, what you have is the same old faces coming back and the same old politics repeating itself. So what is that big change which you should have brought about? Secondly, on the governance record, I think, there are a lot of very serious stuff that we are hearing about the governance in the state right now. And frankly, if people in Delhi are deaf to what is happening on ground, then I think there will be a lot of cost that they will have to bear, not just in Jammu and Kashmir, but elsewhere as well. And I think they should wake up to the kind of drift in administration that is taking place in the entire union territory. Pardon my calling it a state right now.
Okay. So, what I want to show you are two comments made by the Prime Minister, one from Parliament and the other from the interview we did with him during the elections, where he spoke of how the turnout in Jammu and Kashmir was one of his biggest high points of the whole election, that's what gave him the greatest amount of joy. And in Parliament, where he said that the battle against terrorism in Jammu and Kashmir is in its last legs.
आदरणीय सभापति जी, यहाँ कुछ आरोप लगाने की फैशन है, लेकिन कुछ आरोप ऐसे उसके जवाब घटनाएं खुद दे देती है और प्रत्यक्ष को प्रमाण की कोई जरूरत नहीं होती है। जम्मू कश्मीर में हाल में हुए लोकसभा चुनाव में मतदान के जो आंकड़े हैं वो पिछले 4 दशक के रिकॉर्ड को तोड़ने वाले हैं। और इसको सिर्फ कोई घर से गया बटन दबा के आया इतना नहीं है, भारत के संविधान को स्वीकृति देते हैं, भारत के लोकतंत्र को स्वीकृति देते हैं, भारत के इलेक्शन कमीशन को स्वीकृति देते हैं। ये बहुत बड़ी सक्सेस है आदरणीय सभापति। देशवासी जिस पल की प्रतीक्षा करते थे वो आज इतनी सहज सरलता के सामने दिख रही है आदरणीय सभापति।
मोदी जी, 2014 से पहले भी मैंने कश्मीर कवर किया है, उसके बाद भी किया है, और केवल एक शहर और डाउनटाउन नहीं बल्कि बॉर्डर्स तक, जहां पर लोगों को लगा कि वो इंक्लूसिव हो रहे हैं, वो जुड़ रहे हैं मुख्य धारा के साथ। फिर 370 आया, उसके बाद से पत्थरबाजी नहीं हुई, हड़ताल नहीं हुई। श्रीनगर में क्या कमाल की वोटिंग इस बार हो गई। पर एक बहुत बड़ा धड़ा है जो कहता है कि बताइए हमसे राज्य का दर्जा ले लिया है। आप जम्मू कश्मीर की जनता को कुछ कहना चाहेंगे?
पहली बात है कि मेरे इस चुनाव में आपने सवाल पूछा होता तो मुझे अच्छा लगता, लेकिन आप लोगों ने नहीं पूछा। लेकिन मैं आपने विषय निकाला इसलिए मैं उसमें से सवाल भी पैदा करता हूं, जवाब भी देता हूं। इस पूरे चुनाव में मेरे लिए संतोष की पल कौन सी? तो मेरे लिए संतोष की पल है श्रीनगर का वोटिंग, क्योंकि इसने इस बात को थप्पा मार दिया कि मेरी नीतियां सही है, मैं कोई डिस्क्रिमिनेशन नहीं करता हूं, मेरी सरकार धर्म के आधार पर भेदभाव नहीं करती है। जहाँ तक राज्य का दर्जा का, हमने पार्लियामेंट में प्रॉमिस किया हुआ है और हम उस पर कमिटेड हैं। हाँ, हम सफल होना चाहते हैं, सफल इन द सेंस पॉलिटिकल पावर में नहीं, स्थितियों में। और पहले हम पर क्या गालियां पड़ती थी, आपने इंटरनेट बंद कर दिया, चारों तरफ होलना मीडिया में। हम जाते थे मीटिंग में तो आप लोग मिलते थे तो इंटरनेट बंद कर दिया, कौन सा लोकतंत्र है। गालियां खाई, लेकिन मेरे कश्मीर का भला मैंने किया है। मैं दूर का देख सकता था, आप 24 घंटे चैनल के लिए देखते थे, मैं देश के लिए देखता था। और इसलिए मैं इंटरनेट की गालियां खाने के बाद भी, इंटरनेट बंद कर करके भी मैं नौजवानों को गलत रास्ते से बचाने में सफल हुआ। दूसरा मेरा संतोष है, अब 10 साल का समय लगा लीजिए, मानो 2004 से 2014, कितनी माताओं ने अपने बच्चे खोए होंगे। 2014 से 24 कितनी माताओं के लाल बच गए। जीवन में इससे बड़ा संतोष क्या होता है जी।
So the big question now is, how should the Indian Army and the Indian state respond? Now, there can be some tactical responses by the Indian Army which don't need political approval, why the Indian Army is well within its authorization to carry out responses in the manner that the area commanders deem fit. The other is the kind of response that we saw at Balakot, the kind of response that we saw after Uri. So let me go across first to General Dua on your sense of, whether the threshold, because the Prime Minister has said very clearly, andar ghus ke marenge, and we'll pull your eye out and you dare attack us. Now Pakistan's attacking us again and again. There have been seven attacks in just the last 1 month since he was sworn in for the third time. Has the threshold been breached already? How close are we to breaching that threshold, which requires a cross-border action of some kind? How would you be looking at the question of how should India respond?
There have been several attacks, as we've all just discussed at length, in this south of Pir Punjab region. Especially this yesterday's attack, where we've lost 5 brave hearts and many more, and several are wounded. This is certainly a cause for concern. Army, as we speak, or the security forces, as we speak, are certainly taking action. What shape that action will take, when you said, should it be a cross-border attack or not? Now, that is something, if we delve into that, it'll be a matter of speculation. I mean, we'll have to leave that for the operations directorates.
No, I'm not getting into that, sir. Sir, I'm just, so that we are very clear, I'm not saying how will India respond. That's really for force commanders on the ground at this moment who are in service to decide. I'm saying, how should India respond? Given that there have been these 7 attacks, do you think the response is to go after these terrorists, to try and neutralize these 24 odd terrorists who are active in the Poonch region, or do you think it's time to do something bigger and more audacious in terms of messaging and signaling? What's your view on that?
It has to be a multi-pronged approach, as per my view. We have to tighten our grid in this IB sector, that is the international border sector of Kathua, Samba, and a little bit of Jammu district. We have to tighten and tighten the grid at the borders. The intelligence agencies have to get us better intelligence, and the security forces have to coordinate better, no matter if there is Western Command and Northern Command that we have to coordinate, but we have to get this thing going. That is one prong. On the other hand, we need to think of bold responses, certainly. What shape that bold response will take, and I was saying that earlier, what shape that bold response will take, the leadership has to take that call. Third, we have to diplomatically isolate Pakistan on this kind of high-profile terror attacks that Pakistan is now promoting and encouraging across the borders into our territory. And last, we need to ensure that we should continue with our elections process and do whatever it takes to to keep that under a certain threshold so that the state elections which are imminent, are conducted in time. And the
Colonel Shukla, given what happened after Uri, given what happened after during Balakot, how close are we to the threshold that this government has set for itself, which would necessitate a cross-border response? Has it already been breached in aggregate? If you add up these attacks, you know, it's a very big number. Have we reached that threshold? Are we about there? How would you define and determine that threshold? Colonel Shukla.
Threshold by and large determines itself. You don't, you don't have to have a numbers count or a bodies count. The country knows, and the country politically expresses when it's time to retaliate. And I don't think it's time yet to retaliate with the cross-border strike. It would be overreaction. And as you yourself brought out just now, the last one didn't yield any sort of major change results. So it was not worth it. But one thing has to be done. This whole business of the Jammu area coming alive and being sort of a part of the terrorist scheme of things now is something that has to be stopped. Jammu presents a rest and recreation ground for the terrorists in Kashmir. It sort of allows people to infiltrate on a much easier basis from the Pakistan side than the high snow-covered mountains of Kashmir. So the whole sort of ability of terrorists to use the Jammu region as a R&R camp or as a sort of rest area has to be brought to a halt. It was done earlier. Post the 2002 elections, the sort of whole story in the narrative in Jammu and Poonch and Rajouri had completely changed. And that came as a big pressure on the terrorists who were operating in Kashmir. So I think that is what we need to
Sushant Sareen, Ajay Shukla says it's not time to cross the border and retaliate inside Pakistan. Is that something you agree with, or do you think given the standards the Modi government has set and all the public posturing, we are very close to when the Indian state will have to respond cross-border?
Yeah, they'll have to, but I would imagine, look, I don't entirely disagree with what Ajay is saying, but the point is we could have a disagreement on whether that particular threshold has been reached. You know, if 9 civilians in a bus are massacred, if you are having ambushes of the kind you are having, then clearly, something's got to give, one. Secondly, I think it's important that how do we define the threshold? You know, Ajay is speaking about something very ephemeral. Humko pata lag jayega. But the bottom line is that I think as a serious nation, you have to start defining. Is it 16 people getting burned? Is it 40 people being blown up? Or are you going to say that, okay, fine, I'm not going to be a frog in a boiling pot, a boiling pan. I'm going to hit back. Now, what form the hit back takes, you can decide. But it has to deliver the message to the other side that you're willing to up the ante. So you have to up the ante. But Rahul, at the end of the day, you also have to make a case internationally, whether we like it or not. And that international case has to be that, look, these are not local guys. For example, the Kulgam guys were all locals, right? You have to make a case that these are guys who are actually being directed from Pakistan, who are being controlled from Pakistan, who have Pakistanis coming in to help them, beef them up, give them training and carry out operations, give them all kinds of other equipment and other stuff. You have to start making that case so that if you are going to up the ante, nobody in the world can turn around and say that, look, what the hell are you trying to do? So I think it is important to deliver the message.
So you're saying up the ante, there's also an election. The moment you up the ante and then you're building up to an election which has to be concluded before September, Mr. Ved, there is that complication as well, because naturally India would want that it seem that things are as calm and normal as possible in the build up to the election. If you're constantly having these 7 attacks in a month, that's a very big number. What would you suggest? Up the ante, cross the border, strike the terrorists at their bases like we've done in the past, or go after the terrorists who are present in the Jammu region and try and neutralize them first?
Rahul, See, we must understand most of these terrorists who are operating in Jammu region, like Kashmir, are foreigners. Two terrorists who got neutralized near Hiranagar were foreigners. The three who got eliminated only 3 days back in Doda were foreigners. All those who are operating Rajouri Punch are foreigners. Now, I don't know about this present group. Most probably, this also seems to be part of the Doda group who have crossed from the international border. My first suggestion is, first, we must take steps to strengthen the anti-infiltration grid. These incidents are happening because the terrorists have managed to enter, whether from IB or the LOC. You need to take the leadership of the army and the BSF needs to take steps to ensure that infiltration does not take place. Maybe local sport is there. After all, without that sport, these foreigners cannot operate. That need to be handled strictly by J&K police. Identify those people and go after them. And those who are operating within need to be neutralized as soon as possible. But as far as your question of going across the border, see, the intent of attack on Riyasi incident was to have as many as 40 plus casualties. It was just good fortune that the bus fell down and they could not execute all of them, although the terrorists came down and fired even after the accident. So that would have been something like Pulwama. But after every incident, you cannot go across and have something like surgical strike or what happened after Pulwama. So first we need to strengthen our inside thing. Don't allow.
I just want to show this data to Ashpreet and to everyone else. This compares terror attacks in the 10 years of UPA with the 10 years of the Modi Sarkar. Now, if you see, under the UPA, 1,402 civilians were killed. That figure is at 353. Security forces martyred under UPA in 10 years was 185, less than half at 585 under the NDA. Terrorists killed is 3,963. NDA is 1,726. This is data according to the South Asia Terrorism Portal. So across different parameters, the level of terrorism, Ashpreet, is substantially down. In some cases, it's almost a fifth. In some cases, it's half. So, yes, there is a problem in the last 1 month, but net, things in Jammu and Kashmir, when it comes to the issue of terrorism, have, at least in the first 10 years of the Modi government, actually been getting better.
Rahul, kindly allow me a minute and a half uninterrupted. Number one, you talked of data, I'll give you data. In UPA regime from 2012 to 2014, 61 civilians and 115 officers from the security forces were killed. And in the last 3 years of the Modi government, 110 civilians were killed, 2020 to 2022, and almost double, 137 security forces were killed despite...
No, but you're cherry picking a time period. I'm comparing 10 years of Modi versus 10 years of Manmohan.
No, but time period also matters. Now we are talking of the latest figures. We are talking of 2020 to 2022. Now, number two, I'll give you another example of how the Bharatiya Janata Party's government ignores Jammu and Kashmir. There was no candidate that they fielded in the Lok Sabha election in Jammu and Kashmir. Number two, despite this debate being on such an important topic, such a sensitive topic, they haven't sent a spokesperson. Rarely does Mr. Modi visit Jammu and Kashmir. These are three major examples. Next is that as much focus and as many visits that Mr. Modi gives to election-going states, if 10% of that would have been given to Jammu and Kashmir, there would have been a massive, a significant difference.
Okay.
When there will be an election in Jammu and Kashmir, you will see 10 times more visits will be there by the Bharatiya Janata Party's leaders because election is all that matters. That last point. Rahul, when I talked of that Mr. Modi should visit Jammu and Kashmir, he should take stock of the situation, you misinterpreted that. I don't know how and why, but I'll tell you what. When the stock of the situation is taken, Mr. Modi doesn't have to go to the place of the occurrence. He just has to go to Jammu and Kashmir at a safe, secure place, meet with the DGP, meet with the governor, and make people see that he's concerned about them, that they matter to them. Because, of course, Mr. Modi's life is very important, but so is the lives of all those locals that are there, that have been dying, that have been...
So you've heard different perspectives. If he goes, it also shows that everything is shaken and stirred, that he's dropped everything he's doing and he's rushing over there. What he needs to do is really take a call on when that threshold is reached. And you've heard different perspectives. Should we up the ante? Because they can keep striking and we can keep berating lapses in procedure, protocol, norms which led to those attacks, or will we strike back and send a very strong message to Pakistan and to their handlers that this kind of attack is completely unacceptable? So we've had an incisive conversation. I want to thank our guests for lighting up the conversation with their insights. BCCI Secretary Jai Shah has announced that Gautam Gambhir, the mentor of the Kolkata Knight Riders, will be the next coach of Team India, replacing Rahul Dravid. Our consulting editor for sports, Nikhil Naz, joins us. Nikhil, when we were discussing India's big victory, we'd spoken about the prospects of Gambhir becoming the next coach. That's exactly what seems to have happened. Who all were in the fray and why was Gambhir picked over there?
Well, Rahul, usually, as you know, BCCI are very good at keeping secrets, but this was that rare occasion when everyone knew that Gautam was going to be India's coach, because what we had learned, you talk about that conversation we had a couple of days ago, what we had learned was that it was the BCCI that had initially approached Gautam Gambhir, and which is why it was a no-brainer that he was going to be the next coach of the Indian team. What we got to know, there were only two contenders in fray. There was Gautam Gambhir and there was W.V. Raman, another former India player who's had experience coaching the Indian women's national team as well. So there were only two contenders there. Gautam, as you know, comes with a great reputation, having played all formats. He's a new age coach, and I think that was one of the criteria that BCCI were looking at, that you needed a coach who's also played a lot of T20 cricket. You have been getting coaches that have had a lot of experience in test match cricket, in ODI cricket, but Gautam Gambhir as a player, and let's not forget as a coach too, spent a couple of seasons with the newly formed IPL franchise in Lucknow Super Giants, and they did very well under his mentorship when they reached the playoff stage on both occasions. And then the famous story, we believe, Shah Rukh Khan approached Gautam Gambhir, gave him a blank check, said, you need to come back to the franchise that you captained to an IPL trophy. He joins them, and fairy tale, and he takes them to another title after a massive
So what
gap.
makes him special? Given the kind of personality he had, given that he's had a run in politics as a BJP MP from Delhi as coach, given the expectations, why do you think he's the right man for this job?
A couple of things for that, Rahul. One, as I mentioned, that they needed a player who's had experience playing T20 cricket as well as coaching T20 teams. You've had candidates in the past, stalwarts at that in test match cricket, ODI cricket. So now that T20 cricket has become very important, so needed that. Secondly, as I said, he comes with a lot of pedigree now in coaching too. He spent a good enough time being coaches at the IPL level. He's done well. And third, and I think the foremost thing that's really come into the fray, is that the BCCI did approach a lot of other big names, but no one was really committed to 12 months of traveling, 12 months of intense coaching and scrutiny that comes with the job of being an Indian coach. Gautam, on the other hand, went on to say that, listen, if the Indian team calls me, I'll even let go of Kolkata Knight Riders, where he had a fair hand under Shah Rukh Khan. He said, I'll let go of that. Every time the Indian team calls me, I'll go there. So those are the things that went into considering why Gautam Gambhir should be the favourite, and probably
so what's his next big assignment?
He actually, what we're getting to know, Rahul, that the Indian team as we speak are in Zimbabwe. Gautam himself was very keen to go to Zimbabwe, but because the announcement hadn't come, the Indian team has sent an interim coach in VVS Lakshman, who one point was the favourite to take over after Rahul Dravid, but then VVS Lakshman pulled out, saying that he cannot be coaching throughout those 12 months. Now the next big assignment that you will see Gautam Gambhir, not really a big assignment, but the first time you will see him be the coach of the Indian team will be end of the month. 27th of July is going to be the first T20 that India and Sri Lanka are going to be playing. India travelling to Sri Lanka for 3 T20Is, 3 ODIs. He'll be coaching there. But the big assignment is definitely going to be Champions Trophy. The Champions Trophy is a mini World Cup, for those of you who don't know, and also is scheduled to take place in Pakistan. If it does go ahead as planned, that's February 2025. That's going to be the next massive assignment that the Indian team will play under Gautam Gambhir.
Well, let's see how Gauti does as coach of the Indian team. This is a job he has built up some credentials for, and we wish him and Indian cricket all the best. Nikhil Nas, thank you for joining us. 60 hours after he killed a 45-year-old woman with his BMW, the Mumbai hit-and-run accused Mihir Shah has finally been arrested. He was nabbed from Virar. Mihir's mother and sisters have also been detained for helping him hide. Remember, Mihir was drinking before he got into his car. Cops will also probe if he consumed drugs. No breath analyzer test was done on Mihir. Now, 3 days later, all traces of alcohol would have erased, and that's a challenge the police will have to deal with.
Mihir Shah, son of Shiv Sena leader Rajesh Shah, is finally under arrest. 3 days after his speeding BMW claimed the life of a 45-year-old woman in Worli. More shocking details of the hit and run have emerged. At around 5:30 a.m. on Sunday, Mihir Shah's car hit Kaveri Nakhwa and her husband Pradeep Nakhwa, who were on a two-wheeler. Kaveri fell on the bonnet of Mihir's car and was dragged for 1.5 kilometers before falling off. At this point, Mihir allegedly switched seats, making his driver take the steering wheel. Sources say the driver, while reversing the car, allegedly ran over Kaveri. Rajesh Shah, who is a Shiv Sena leader from Palghar, was constantly in touch with Mihir Shah after the crash. Rajesh Shah allegedly tried to implicate the driver by asking him to take the blame for the accident. Mihir Shah fled the scene immediately.
तुम्हारा कोई सगे वाला नहीं ना मरा, इसलिए ऐसा हो रहा है. तू बोल रहा है गरीबों का सरकार है. कौन सा गरीबों का सरकार है? हाँ? गरीब ऐसे रास्ते में मरेगा, हर दिन मरेगा. कोई नहीं उसको देखने वाला. 2 बच्चा रो रहा है. वो बोल रहा है माँ बाबा. ये प्रशासन कुछ नहीं है. ये देवेंद्र फडणवीस कुछ नहीं है. गृह मंत्री के नाम पे कलंक है साला. हमारे पीछे कौन है? कौन है हमारे पीछे? बताओ.
Rajesh Shah, who is accused of trying to cover up the crime, spent just 1 day in custody before being released on a bail bond of 15,000 rupees. The opposition is questioning Maharashtra CM Eknath Shinde's links with Rajesh Shah. The BMW hit and run comes more than a month after the Porsche crash in Pune. In both cases, the suspects from rich families have tried to subvert the law by trying to pin the blame on the drivers employed by them. As anger mounts over the VVIP culture, the question remains the same as always. Will justice be served? Bureau Report, India Today.
This is where I wrap up the news track tonight. For your time and your trust, thank you very much. I look forward to seeing you 8 p.m. tomorrow evening. Till then, from all of us here, goodbye, good night.